right, welcome back to the Unqualified for Space podcast with me, Michael Hodges. And today I have as my guest on the show, Mr. Camden Davis. You can follow him on Twitter and on YouTube at GigaCam. So, Cam, how you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good. It's, just living that life, man.
Yeah, you got to. Somebody has to, right?
Right?
So I like to start off every episode with what interests you or doesn't interest you about space. Like, why do you follow it or not follow it?
I would say what interests me about space is the unknown, and um I don't know. Ever since I was little, you look up at those stars and you're
Mhm.
always, wondering how you feel kind of small at that point, and then you kind of want to be like, well, what's it like over there? And that's kind of what I've always wondered since I was little. So I've been following stuff. I love space sci-fi movies and books and stuff like that, just frees your imagination in some ways.
Yeah, it definitely does it. I think it lends a lot of people to think about things in a way that they never would if they didn't study it. So I think it's definitely beneficial in my point of view.
Yeah.
So now we're on that topic. Is there anything about space that you have heard spoken about or anything that you don't believe in?
Don't believe in. I mean, we could get on the whole flat earth stuff, but that's just a whole nother can of worms I don't even want to start with.
Yeah, I've
Because
breached
that
that
one just
subject once
blows my
already.
mind.
So yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, like, it makes sense to mess there. You're like, why are people not, like, are you dense? But,
Hmm.
um I don't know. I've always kind of wondered why more people aren't funding into it. Like, why don't we have a moon base? Like, we were on the moon in the 60s with like tin cans. So, like, why aren't we there now? I don't know. That's like always like a question I've had is like, why are we so like, when did we take a step back and like lose, um, knowledge would be a good word for
Yeah.
that.
That's a good word because we even struggle right now just to get back to the moon in terms of technology. So it's a valid concern, I think, as to why we regressed from being able to land there with one computer that had like 10 kilobytes or maybe slightly more
The
of
I-84
processing.
calculator.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man, we can do better than that. But it's just the geopolitical, I think, climate at the times, and then the unwillingness to spend massive amounts of money on a space program. But
Yeah.
things happen and we try and get over them as best we can, but now we're getting back to the point where i think um I think my kids, by the time that I almost have a teenager, but I think by the time she's mid 20s, maybe mid 30s, it's going to be like normal to have people on Mars or on the moon or what have you.
Yeah. I always kind of think we kind of grew up in the prime time of things
Hmm.
where we started out with like, playing outside, and now we have like cell phones that have like the entire internet on them, and just watching that whole transition. And now I think about the next generation, how they already have all this and what they're going to have.
Hmm.
It'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah, especially I was just talking in the last episode I filmed with Sean Mitchell about how the Apollo program went to the moon with less computing power than your iPhone has. We had people who literally went through like almost 6 feet tall of paperwork of calculations to get us there. And now like your phone could do that in like a millisecond. So we've definitely come very far.
Yeah. Now we just got to do it. I guess we just got to strap down and
Yeah, it's got to have the will and the want to push and innovate.
yeah.
So while we're on that discussion, would you go to space if you could, or if you wouldn't want to, what's the reason why you wouldn't?
If given the opportunity, I think going to space would be one of those amazing once in a lifetime things, at least for the average person.
Hmm.
I would definitely go just because, I mean, if I'm going to die, I mean, I'm going to die. It's just how life works.
Yep.
But like at that point, I mean, what is there to lose? You get to experience something that very little people have, and it puts you in perspective. It would put you in place where you are in the universe, because we're pretty small when we think about it, in this vast emptiness of space. And it would be cool to go up there just to kind of get a whole different perspective, because it's one thing to talk about it, but it'd be another thing to
Hmm.
experience it.
Yeah, I think living it, from all the interviews I've seen with astronauts and what have you, said it's a completely different world when you're actually up there. Just like most things, you have to experience it to believe it. So, you know.
I was reading this book, actually listening, Audible, gotta love them.
Hmm.
um it was about going to the moon, and this person interviewed everybody that they could before they were to pass, about what it was like to go into space, what it was like to land on the moon in the Apollo program.
Hmm.
And it was just fascinating to just some of the details of how those guys described what they were seeing, and then how like it changed as we were just pushing and progressing so fast, and how they would go up with one set of things and try to learn, but on like the last mission they learned so much more that they came up there with a completely new
Hmm.
schedule. It was one of those good books. I'll have to look it up real quick. Voyages of the Apollo Astronauts.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't
And
read that. I'll probably have to look that up.
Tom Hanks kind of pushed it out a little bit more, but it was by Andrew Chaikin, and it goes into a lot of details. It's a nonfiction, basically a biography of like all of those astronauts and their descriptions of things, and how they describe the feelings of what they experience. Really struck interest with me again,
Hmm.
because as I was growing up, I kind of pushed it to the side. I was like, "Hey, I got to work on education more," and I put it in the back of my head. But then I started listening to books as I was driving, and that one really piqued my interest again.
Yeah, and the things that they had to go through just to be selected into the astronaut program were just ridiculous. Even today's standards, what they have to do probably pales in comparison to those original tests. So
Yeah, like they
definitely
were
some hardcore guys.
top of the top.
Yeah, that's why they were mostly test pilots and stuff, because they weren't afraid to, just do what it took. Which is I don't know if you've seen the movie or read the book, The Right Stuff.
I've heard about it, but I have not had the opportunity
Mhm.
to.
It's kind of like the movie, at least, is like kind of a dramatization of the original, like Mercury, Gemini Apollo program type guys. So it's a really interesting walkthrough from when they started training till when they actually got to go up on missions and what happened. So it's definitely worth a read or a watch, depending on how you like to view things.
Depends,
Yeah,
but
some
I will
some
have to
people
look
are
that
really
one.
into
I will
books.
have
Some
to
people,
look that one. I would say another thing that really piqued my interest is when I was young. I'm the youngest in my family,
okay,
and my older brother had a model rocket, and when we set it off, it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. Um, you've seen the movie October Sky?
yep, it's one of my favorite movies, actually.
Yeah, I love that movie. So it was kind of like that, where towards the end they had those little rockets. Um, it was just one of the coolest things to watch, and that kind of piqued my interest when I was in like middle school and early elementary school, because I was about that age that I was able to experience those things before my brother, broke his rocket. The parachute didn't deploy.
Yeah, it happens, unfortunately.
We didn't have much money, so we never got another one.
I used to be that kid too. My mom would, like, every once in a while, maybe at best, get me like a small little model rocket, and I'd be out there just destroying it. But hey, that's what you do, and that's how you learn,
And
right?
plus, some coats work too.
Yeah.
Some duct
I
tape.
yeah, I still go and buy those things. I'm trying to get my kids into, and they're very interested in space stuff, because I've living here in Florida, it's easy to kind of just go over to Kennedy Space Center and watch a launch. Not even from inside, you can just be on the side of the road and you can see them.
Yeah,
So
I saw you posting some of your videos of the last SpaceX launch that happened in the nighttime,
yep.
and I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty jealous. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's
And
one of the advantages of
I
living here. Yeah.
I called my dad and I was like, hey, you got to look at this. And he's like, I remember the time when we as a nation would stop and watch that.
Hmm.
And I kind of envy that in some ways. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's that whole like running outside and stopping and watching it is kind of that's still me basically. I just when I know they're going on, I like nothing else matters. I'm outside watching it. So that's I still operate that same way.
Well, I mean, you live close enough. I'm out
Yeah.
in Idaho. I mean, the coolest thing we got is like a cow walking by.
Yeah, I guess that might be fun for some people. Who knows?
I mean, but I mean, in some ways, it's kind of nice though, because I got a beautiful night sky that doesn't have any light pollution, so that's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
you have much better viewing opportunities out there than we do here for sure.
Yeah.
So we can move on to the next thing, especially since you just mentioned movies. I like to get on to that if we can.
Okay.
Are there any movies that you think are the best space movies, and which ones do you think are like the worst space movies as far as like trying to get things accurate?
Oh boy. I mean, you always have Interstellar. That's like up there
That's the great one. Yeah.
as like one of the greats. I'm trying to remember the one that has Sandra Bullock in it. What's the name of
Gravity.
that one? Gravity. That was a pretty cool one. I had read that the runtime of the film was the amount of time that it takes to orbit once. Is that
I believe it's somewhere around there. Yeah, I have to watch it again, but to be sure. Yeah.
that was a cool movie. They got the physics of how things worked really well in that movie. I think personally.
Mhm.
I mean, it's been a while since I've watched it, so I could be wrong. But, that's one of my favorites. The Martian's always that was a pretty good one. Book's better, but whatever. It,
Yeah,
it always seems to be that way.
book is generally always better than the movies for sure.
So that was a fun one. I liked that one because that brings me into like the whole colonization of Mars, which I want to do. That's something I think should be happening now already, but
Hmm.
it's 2020. We're teaching people how to wash hands now instead of flying cars.
Yeah, that's true because people still don't know you should be doing at least 20 seconds, but that's
For
either.
real.
Yeah, yeah I think as far as for me, it's Interstellar is probably. I like to kind of categorize movies in like the decade, I guess, that they were produced in. Um,
Okay.
Apollo 13 for me is probably my favorite movie.
Oh my gosh, why did I say that one? That's so good.
Yeah, that's probably like my favorite movie of all time, besides like some military movies that I kind of hold at the same level. But Apollo 13, Interstellar, and I'm kind of struggling to find one that's at like the same level of those two. But I'd probably say like The Martian would probably be third. Because there's some other ones like, did you ever see Space Cowboys or Space
I
Cow?
didn't.
The one with like
I'm not gonna
Tommy Lee
lie.
Jones and them into it.
I saw like space and cowboy. I don't know. Like I was just like those two don't match. I just didn't catch my interest.
I was like, yeah, I mean, as good as like the actors maybe that were in the movie. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, it came out in like 1992, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything. But the dude literally rides like nukes to the moon from the space station, like low Earth orbit. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that.
One of those movies that has like so much so right and so much so wrong, I would say is Armageddon.
Yeah.
They're so good in so many ways, but there's so many bad things. How you're just like, that's not real. That's not happened. There's no way. Like,
Yeah, it really pains me at times when you see certain things like that and you're just like, really guys? Like I get it, it's Hollywood, you gotta make things
you got to
interesting
keep it interesting.
because most people wouldn't watch a movie if it was factually accurate about space, because no sound, there's
I
no
would.
explosions. I'll say, yeah, me too. But most people would be like, oh, the space station didn't explode. Why not? Because no air in space. So like these little things that they make these movies about, that you're just like, yeah, no way would that ever happen in real world. But I get it. It's Hollywood, so you gotta do what you gotta do.
I think part of my problem is I have a hard time enjoying movies
Mm-hmm.
because my dad is a chemical engineer.
Okay.
Growing up, he worked for like Intel and stuff like that. He currently works for Plexus, and they put stuff in the Starlink satellites, but that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but because of that, I always like see things and I'll be like, "That's not real. There's no way that could happen." No, so I'll just like destroy movies like that. So like my wife's like, "You're such a buzzkill."
Yeah, my wife doesn't really watch like action, like military-esque movies too much. She's not really like into it, but I watch a lot of them, being veteran stuff myself. But I'm the same way. I'll watch a movie, or especially like space science related stuff. I'm just like, nope, nope. Like, damn, come on. Like I start getting frustrated, and it gets hard for me to enjoy certain ones. But nature of the beast, I guess.
It is what it is.
So do you ever have, I'm sure you have plans to witness a rocket launch one day, I assume?
I do. So currently, I live out in Burley, Idaho. It's out in the middle of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife is a elementary school teacher. When we met in college, she was closer to being done than I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my schooling on hold and put the money forward to get her through, and now we're flip flopped. So this is where she
Okay.
got a teaching job, and so I'm going to local community college here to finish up my degree in automotive. But once that happens, we'll be moving out of Idaho, and yeah, we'll probably end up more in the Midwest. But because of that, we'll be a lot closer to be able to go witness something like that. It's something that both of us have actually wanted to go see. And my wife's sister works at Disney World there in Florida, so we'll have
Okay.
a opportunity to.
Yeah.
We'll just I may or may not just line up stuff so I can see something while I'm down there.
Hey, you do what you gotta do. No shame in that. So, especially when it comes to
Don't go to
rocket
Disney
launches.
World, psych.
Yeah, I'm about equal distance from Disney World to Cape Canaveral. So, if
Oh man, you're
about
in the
40
happiest place
minutes,
in the world for sure.
yeah. Especially for my kids, because they love Disney. So, shout out to them, I guess, for making stuff my kids are really interested in and make me want to spend money about. It's Disney's greatest power, making parents spend money.
Because the parents are trying to relive their childhood memories too.
Oh, my wife's still a child at heart, so that's okay
Aren't
though.
we all?
Yeah,
Our toys just get more expensive.
exactly. That's for sure. No doubt about that at all. But so you spoke about Mars colonization. So do you feel that that's something that is happening soon, like in relative terms, or do you think it's something that is a little too hyped up and it actually take longer than people think?
Well, if we want to be realistic, I think it's going to be maybe at the end of my life that something like that might happen. If we're being realistic, because right now the only person really pushing that would be SpaceX and
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk. I don't want to focus or be completely biased to one thing or not, but he's the only one pushing that right now, really, for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. So without any real help from anybody else, I don't think it's going to happen as fast as we all want it to, realistically. I would like to be, saying that it'll happen years from now, but it probably won't. Just in my opinion, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about the logistics going into everything to have a very credible answer for that one, I guess. But I would say that it would be a little bit later than most of us hope.
So do you believe that his like time frame that they're shooting for is realistic based on what's happened thus far in their progression, or do you think that's still even somewhat like
I would say that's
undershot?
optimistic,
Yeah.
um, if we're being realistic. But you know, he's pulled the impossible out too many times now that I don't even know what to say anymore. He went from,
Yep.
taking huge delays to try to get his, Tesla vehicles out and or his first successful launches to really actually happen.
Hmm.
But he's on such a rapid succession with things that even, I mean, the Model Y got pushed out way fast now, faster than
Hmm.
anybody really expecting. So I mean, I don't know. Anything's possible really with that. I I would say it's still a little bit optimistic, but who knows?
And do you think the first missions are just going to be scientists and people like that, on any type of space related thing? But do you think when, let's say, 15 years from now, just throw out a date, we've done
Mhm.
a few missions to Mars, we, relatively speaking, have the science down pat, like we know people are going to survive, people are going to make it, blah, blah. Do you think that there will be a ton of people who want to go, or do you think the unknowns and the dangers of something like that would put off the majority of people?
I would say I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to go. I think about the colonization of early America. I mean, granted, some of them were trying to get out of persecution, but
Hmm.
there are a lot of people who are just like, adventure, let's go. I would say there's going to be a lot of daredevils and adrenaline junkies who want to get out there, have their claim to fame. I would say maybe. So I think if given the opportunity, and it wasn't like an arm and a leg expensive, it will be. But
Hmm.
if the cost can get down low enough to the point where the average person can have a shot or a chance of doing it, I wouldn't see any reason not.
I think that I'd definitely go, just to put that out there. My wife, no, for sure. That's like 100% no. She would not go. We had this joke that she's like, "Yeah, you can go, and then when you get back, let me know how it goes." So I was like, "If I get to come back, there's always that." But um,
Ain't no Mark Watney.
yeah, I know, right? I'm not going to be growing potatoes in my own stool, so. But I feel like aspirational goals like the 2024 date is, I personally think it's something that it could happen. Do I think that it'll happen with people at 2024? No. I think that it's going to be, the first two missions will probably be just like robotic. They're going to send the ship there and see if it lands, and then maybe have a robot or something they develop come out of it. So I think probably 2025, 26 will probably be like the first actual manned mission.
Attempt, yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I think it'll rejuvenate some interest in the general
Hmm.
public, and if you have the general public pushed and interested, you have a lot more opportunity and funding at that point.
Yeah, I think especially like, because the original missions of most things are for exploration and science, obviously, and his in particular original mission was the whole like plant on Mars, and you need to take a photo of it, and you'd see like this red background and a,
Growing or
yeah,
and we're supposed to have like the ability to grow along with it, if I remember correctly.
yeah. So that was his like original aspiration, and I think like Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, they're really pushing hard for like the moon. They're like they already built the whole lander and all this type of stuff. So I think aspirational goals in space are important, because if they don't internally push harder than anybody else, then it'll never happen. Because I mean,
Yeah,
let's be honest, the average public probably couldn't give a hoot about whether we land on Mars. There.
they're just worried about their next paycheck.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, but I think there is, if you have those goals set, you have something to work towards.
Hmm.
'Cause then you have accountability, and accountability will make you more responsible and want to achieve goals, and that pushes you farther.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like we were talking about in the beginning, getting back to the moon even, it's been a long time. And unfortunately, people like, Buzz and things, they're not going to be around forever. So I'd love to see like the first person to land back on the moon speak with Buzz Aldrin, like on like a live stream type thing. And that would be like the most like momentous, I think, occasion. And
Right.
if they don't do that, then whoever's listening to this, you're wrong. You should definitely do that.
You're just wrong. No
you gotta
questions.
you gotta
Wrong.
have the second dude on the moon talking to the first person to land on the moon again.
Generation.
Yeah, like come on. If you're not doing that, what are you thinking? But so, I'd like to ask: do you think that then, now we're on this topic, that governments are the ones that will get us to colonization of space, or is it private industry, or is it a combination of the two that should be like the best way forward?
I think it'd be a combination, to be honest with you. If Because the only people who really want to go are going to be private industry. Um, and the reason why I say that is the space race that happened. That was a giant political, like America superpower versus USSR.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a huge political battle, and that they didn't have like the internet or anything to. So that was just kind of like how they were flexing in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
In today's world, we don't really care. And without making your podcast political or anything,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's so many different political opinions right now that I believe they're going to be more concerned on trying to either fix the country and make us feel more united
Mm-hmm.
than they are wanting to push money towards a rocket, or develop NASA's own stuff. So I think private's going to be the way that pushes it. However, I think with like NASA's budget, if they can just push money over to some of these other things like Blue Origin or SpaceX, then we have a real shot at actually getting it, because the NASA has a humongous budget comparatively speaking to some of these private owned industries,
Mm-hmm.
but they are a government organization, so they're going to be with a very slow gear turn, but they have the backing of money.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a private industry, they're just pumping and going. They don't have the money, so they're making things work and they're pushing themselves and innovating. So if they were to be given money from the government to, I think that's where we would really see the English is hard today. Where we would succeed. There we go.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think private industry is the way forward, but it's going to have to require some backing from governments. I mean, NASA right now is huge, and Elon and other people say that the only reason that certain people have gotten to space is because of the research NASA has done. So I don't feel that. I think there's certain things that NASA could be doing better right now, but anybody can do better with most things. But um, I think that there's certain things that private industry does better, like with innovation and pushing the envelope, because the risk tolerance in the government is nowhere near what a private industry is willing to do. So, I mean, that's why we have rockets that are landing when in the 60s they tried it and said, oh, it's impossible. And then for, 50 years now, we've been throwing rockets away. So,
Just slightly expensive.
just a little bit, especially when you consider the shuttle being somewhere on the order of like almost $3 billion per launch.
That's a
Just to,
lot of money. I mean, just try to think about how much money that is kind of disgusting.
and then it costs like, I don't even know the exact number, but it costs somewhere on the order of probably almost that much to refurbish the space shuttle to launch it again. So the cost was just astronomical. And $3 billion right now could probably get most of the Mars program for SpaceX and the lunar program for Blue Origin up and running if they had just $3 billion thrown at them. So When you think of things in terms of that, it's interesting when you get down into it.
It's a $3 billion for you and $3 billion for you. Could you imagine?
Yeah, we'd probably be on Mars within within that 2024 timeline if that was the case. But
Unfortunately, it probably won't happen like that. Sad face.
so you follow. You're talking about NASA, and you're alluded to like the NASA building rockets and things. So they have the SLS system, the Space Launch System. For anyone who doesn't know understand what that means. Um, there's a lot of heat coming from a lot of people as to whether they should keep that program going or if they should cancel it and then funnel that money into projects like we were just speaking about. Do you have any opinion on that? Or
I think, I haven't thought too much into it, but I think something that would be interesting and just to see how it could play out is if maybe they shared some technology. Because SpaceX has some of its has like I think it's Boca Chica, right?
yeah, that's where they're
Where
building some of the Starship stuff.
they're building stuff and they launch from like NASA's places. But like I know NASA has like their because they have their ginormous rocket that they're building right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to make sure that they actually don't ruin the rocket, they have the water that pumps like 3 million gallons of water like that
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that the sound wave doesn't bounce back and destroy the rocket. So I think stuff like if they could maybe share a little bit more, you might see less heat because then you could see less wasteful spending on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people have already figured it out in different areas. So I mean, if you could just be like, "Hey, let's have a goal and go." Like,
yeah, there's a lot of, and it depends. You have your proponents of SLS because when you look at it, it's a gigantic rocket. I mean, that thing is just a beast when you look at it. Its capability and things. It could easily probably get us to Mars, if not even further, with maybe still some left over. I mean, I'm not a astrophysicist or anything, so I don't know those calculations, but when you compare it to things like the New Glenn rocket from Blue Origin or the Starship rocket, and they're both reusable and they're both, the more you launch it, the cheaper it gets. It's kind of hard to figure. All right, you spent $18 billion on SLS versus maybe at best half that on both those programs. So it's a hard pill to swallow for I think most people, and that's why
yeah,
there's a lot of push behind just cancel it, funnel that money into these other projects, and let's get us there faster.
it would probably be the smarter thing to do. I don't know enough of the background to have
Mm-hmm.
a good viable opinion on that. But I would have to agree with you. I mean, if we could funnel that money to them, they would definitely push the envelope a lot more.
I think one thing that would be interesting if they did hypothetically cancel this SLS program, if they could funnel that production ability and from these other companies to make maybe parts that they don't want to, or to speed things up, just reiterate product development. It might even be interesting, instead of that whole workforce going out of work, they could maybe make parts to speed to speed these things up, make multiple amounts of each thing. That could be something, but that's way above our heads, obviously. And
yeah, we're the little guys,
yeah,
unfortunately.
that's on a governmental scale, which I have no say over. So unfortunately, but we'll get there. So, but we were on the whole Mars colonization thing before,
We
and
sidetracked.
yeah, but I know you said you would go, but would your wife go?
Probably not. My wife is the way that she is she doesn't necessarily care about like what car she's driving or if it gets her from point A to point B. That's kind of how she is. So like I don't think
Mm-hmm.
unless there was a compelling reason for her to go, she wouldn't want to.
Would it require like Mars having Netflix and? Starbucks and all that other stuff, you know.
Honestly, no. I think she's more where can I make a difference? Because
Yeah.
she's an elementary school teacher. She loves teaching kids
Hmm.
and inspiring them to make a difference in the world. So unless she could do something like that over there, I don't think she would want to go.
That's one thing I was thinking when you were saying she's a teacher. I was like, I wonder if she would do it for the aspect of being able to share that with
I
students
mean,
and
at
things.
that point, she might if she was guaranteed to be able to go there and back,
Hmm.
she would probably do it just to be able to explain to her, the experiences. But if there's no thing that she can help make a difference with it, then she
Hmm.
wouldn't do it.
You could tell her to apply for the Dear Moon project that Japanese billionaire is doing, and he's taking teachers and artists and people around the moon. So there's your chance, you know.
Your moon. I guess that's what we're going to be looking up later tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Hey,
a
you want to teach second grade with this?
yeah, he's taken I think it's 12 people, and they're going to be like photographers, teachers, scientists, I think he said even like a dancer, which in microgravity I don't know how much dancing you can do. uh, so that part's strange to me, but I get maybe
For science. Do it for the vine.
yeah, maybe it's for when they get back to do some space lunar dance. I don't know, but
Bit of dancing. Yeah.
yeah, it'll be an interesting thing because it'll show people the capability of everyday people going to space, which
The
will
human body
yeah.
and not just these elite physical Top Gun guys.
Yeah, because I think until we get your everyday person who's never run a mile and a half in 8 minutes or less type thing, to well, probably not 8 minutes, probably about like eight and a half, but until we get people like that into space, people won't really believe that it's possible for the everyday person.
Yeah. If the goal's not attainable or achievable by average people, then it's just a fairy tale to most.
Yeah, which is probably why a lot of the after the 60s, we kind of tailed off because Vietnam was happening and the whole like movements that were going on during that time frame, that a lot of people just like now are against it because of why are we focusing on this when we could be doing this. And I think that it's a dangerous slope, I believe, though, because then you're not focusing long term, you're focusing short term.
Yeah. that could be applied to a lot of different things in life, actually, honestly.
Yep.
You don't have the long-term goal set, then you'll cut corners where it matters.
Hmm. And so since I just brought that up, do you have an opinion on the whole, like, we have to leave Earth for a reason, like that reason being we're going to go extinct someday, or do you think it's more of it should just be we should leave Earth because we can leave Earth?
I would be more on the let's leave Earth because we can kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm more religious, so I wouldn't necessarily we're gonna go extinct.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at least I believe that personally. So without going into that, I would say honestly, we're not gonna completely go extinct on this planet, but I think to be able to push the envelope, I think we might be out there in space. Why else would we have a ginormous universe and galaxy to explore
Mm-hmm.
if we couldn't do anything about it? That's where I'm at with. I mean, if you I know there's a lot of different opinions going into the belief system that
Yeah.
I'm going towards, but I just with me being more religious, I think that it's more that God created us and is letting us explore his creations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he would necessarily let us all die.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because there's a lot of people who, I mean, me personally, I'm not a religious person, but there's a lot of people I think who believe one side or the other, and then there's also people who are the in betweens. Like there's plenty of scientists who are religious, and there's plenty of scientists who aren't. And I find it interesting when people kind of like toe the line as to like they believe in certain aspects of this, but there's still this, and then vice versa. So I find that interesting personally.
For you, I mean, for me, like there was always the question like whether or not, but I've had experiences in my life that have made it very clear to me that there
Mm-hmm.
is a higher power. So
Yeah.
so that's where I'm like, well, what is science and what is still something that can actually change?
Mm-hmm.
Where we think is true right now, but it might not be. And that's where I'm at. So I have like my eternal truths that I know,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have the, well, God gave us a brain to learn. Let's go down that route and try to figure things out, figure out the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah, 2 episodes before I interviewed a gentleman who is an actual scientist, but he's also Catholic. So, he studies the universe, and he studied things about Mars and such. And excuse me, I really find it that interesting of when there's certain people who believe that like science is pure science and nothing else touches that. There's people who believe that religion's only religion and there's only that. But then there's also people who believe that one explains the other one. So like when
That's
people cross that kind of divide, yeah, when people cross that divide, I find that an interesting kind of topic. So it's it's, um, it's good on for because I think as a person, I'm heavily into science. I have to believe that anything is plausible one way or another. Now we all have our individual thought processes on things, but there's plenty of things that we don't understand. Like we have no idea what happens in a black hole. We have no idea whether there's aliens out there. There's plenty of things that we don't understand. So as science is concerned, we may think we know a lot of things, but there are some things that we just have no idea. So who knows what will happen in the future with that.
So here's a question for you.
Okay.
If we're going down the alien type thing,
Okay.
do you think that there's more of a humanoid, like what we look like, figure out there, or do you even believe that there are other living beings around other habitable planets and stars?
Yeah, I definitely think that the idea that we're the only thing is just, asinine. I think
Preposterous.
that,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when you just look at what we can see in the universe, which isn't all of it, obviously, because it's exponentially expanding out faster and faster. Um, the idea that there's probably like at least 100 million habitable planets and areas that we have photographed with Hubble and other satellites. But do I think that they're humanoid? That's where it gets kind of gray for me, because that the likelihood of them being exactly the same evolution of from people to early people to today's people would
Mm-hmm.
have to be so particular that the likelihood of that's pretty low. So do I think that there's life? Yes. Do I think that they're exactly humanoid? I don't necessarily think so.
Okay.
I
And
think that there's
I'm going to counter you with that.
yeah.
Being with on that religious side of things,
Hmm.
I think that we're spirit children of God, so there's
Hmm.
that, and I think that He's placed more of us around, so that there's
Hmm.
more humans with this same shape and form on other planets. Whether or not we follow the same evolution and DNA of how things have changed,
Hmm.
like you said, that would be very, very rare. But I do think we are kind of all in this general shape.
Yeah, it's entirely plausible. I mean,
So I
if
don't
you
know. That's
yeah.
where I kind of think about things. I'm just like, because I don't know. I have that more religious side of thing where I'm
Mhm.
thinking of like, okay, why are we here? To
Yep.
learn and grow and to gain experiences, and then when we pass on to the next life, why would we all do that? And I think with this ever expanding universe, there's more to it than what we can see in this life. At least that's what I think personally. So
Hmm.
I think with those other planets, that there's a purpose to them, and if we look like this, why wouldn't something else look like that?
That's even like an aspect of the whole like multiverse,
Oh yeah.
theory. So that very well could be exactly what you're talking about. That there's multiple amounts of people out there that are very very similar to us. Maybe just instead of brown hair, you have blonde hair. Like there's all types of different variations. So that It very well could be. Who knows?
Yep.
It's
We
exciting to
never know
maybe think.
until
Yeah.
maybe we're there on the other side.
Yeah. Who knows? One day we might actually find out, which would be a
That would
whole
be
different.
that's like the one thing that I'm like I can't wait to die for. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I just want to be like, can I watch from the beginning how this all played out?
Yep. I want to see where we came from till now. That would
Yeah,
be
like how'd that all play out for you?
that would be people would probably kill to be able to do that, to be
Yeah.
honest. So that would be extremely interesting one way or another, whether it proves certain people right or proves other people wrong. I think that no matter what, it would be
Be
interesting.
awesome and
Yeah.
to just know for sure.
Yeah, because that's most people's issue, right? And that's why I think a lot of people don't even study space, is because you see these like vast distances, and in the thought that we could be alone. I mean, it's very well plausible that we could be the only. I don't believe it, but we
But
could be
yeah,
the only
that is a
thing.
factor you have to consider. Yeah, we
Yeah,
could be.
I don't believe that we are, but we very well could be the only thing in the universe, and that makes a lot of people probably feel insignificant and small and all those things. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll find out, and it'll write all those beliefs, and you know, we'd go from there. But would probably bring its own challenges, because there's people who would just either way would not
The
believe
Earth
it.
is flat.
Yeah,
Evidence.
which
Nope, you're not going to take that. Okay.
I've had those arguments with people before on that, and I don't know. I struggle with that. I try and be open
I don't
to
know.
a lot
I
of
would
things.
probably lose my cool. I'm like, all right, I don't have time for this bull crap today.
Yeah. That's pretty much how I get, but at the same time I try and be open to people's view, but do I agree with it in any way, shape, or form? Not even a little bit. So
I think that's something that we as a society now struggle with, is being able to have a difference of opinion and still be civil, though. I'm not
yeah.
gonna lie. And that's a lot of the problems we see politically that we see right now. I won't go into that. But like that's
Yeah.
we need to learn how to have these discussions and to agree to disagree, but to still see each other as fellow human beings in some way. And I think if we were to do that, some of these issues with where we're funding money and how it goes to NASA, or whether or not it goes to SpaceX and Blue Origin and stuff like that, I think if we're able to be a little bit more civil, things would get done a little bit nicer too, because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
like people being all petty because he yelled at me and said this and blah 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 blah. And like it could be like, okay, well, this person doesn't necessarily agree with this. Well, how about we do this and we can come to agreement? And like, I don't know. That's just me personally. I think we need
No,
to work on that as a society.
we definitely should, because it would bleed into, like you're saying, a whole host of other
It's solve a lot
realms
of
of,
different issues.
yeah. It would
Pride
solve.
cycle, man. Pride. People
Yeah.
are prideful.
Everyone kind of views their thing from their lens, so if we could have people that's slightly more open, and we all struggle with, no one's going to be perfect in that, obviously, but
Yeah.
in the discussions I have had with people who are like legitimate believe in like hollow earth or flat earth or whatever you want to believe in, flying spaghetti monsters, whatever, but it's just like the certain things like that, which are like established truths that we know, like, yes, you can orbit a satellite around the earth and it takes such and such time, and this is how long it is. Like, I don't know, I don't see how people refute that, but again, that's their belief. It is what it is.
Yeah. So here's another question I guess I could have for you.
Okay.
There's always a lot of discussion that I've seen when I've looked up space stuff, that we know more about space than we do about our oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you with that? Do you think we should put more money into just going underneath the ocean and exploring there, like on our actual planet, or I'll just leave that open to you.
Yeah, I'm kind of a hybrid on that, I believe, because I think that one furthers the other. So it's true. I mean, like I spoke about this on the last episode a little bit, is that I think
I'm sorry
75%.
I
No,
overdid that.
no, it was very brief. So I think it's 75% of the ocean we haven't explored. And obviously, like exploring the ocean will help in certain aspects of humanity, like figuring out how to live in areas that are waterlogged, maybe even living underwater someday, you know, resources and things that are down there that is safe to mine, areas that we need to control because we're as humans polluting, like all these things are necessary for humanity's survival. But I also think that space stuff furthers improvement in those things because we research like extreme environments in space, extreme environments in the ocean. They kind of, you know what I mean? They kind of like one and the other.
One helps the other.
Yep. That's kind of my opinion on that. Do you have a particular opinion on that subject?
I would say like I think we should be exploring both.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't see why it has to be one or the other. Like some people are taking sides, and if you go on forums on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a very heated argument between the two. So I don't
It's just
understand.
just like climate, right? It's the same with the climate. Everyone is like, well, why do anything in space, or why even have rockets, because they're polluting? And you're like, well, rockets don't actually pollute nearly as much as a two-stroke motor, but I mean,
And I'm an automotive guy a lot.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I really do want a Tesla. I mean, you've probably seen my Twitter feed.
Yeah, I have.
That's I am working towards that goal, but I'm a gearhead. I love to tear apart engines, and that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to school for right now. I would love to work on electrical engines and maybe service Teslas. Elon Musk, if you're listening, please hire me.
Get on it.
I'm working towards that goal, but like I don't think that some of the things that like I'm not an extremist in that way either.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything has a purpose and should be used in moderation.
Yep. Because I mean, our understanding of our climate, I believe, I could be wrong, as it is today, most of it has come from satellites viewing things. I mean, we can track hurricanes, we can track, typhoons if you're in that area of the world. We can track ocean currents and see where things are moving. So, like the climate thing is, I 100% believe, for anyone who questions that climate change is real, humans affect their environment in any way, shape, or form. There's thinking that we don't is, I don't know, that's kind of out there for me. But I don't know. I really think that the only reason we can understand what we can is because of space with the climate. So, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. So the more we have out there to help us study here, I think it's just it's 100% like, good.
The other thing that I would add to yours, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just give you a different perspective. I think that yes, we as humans are affecting the climate. I cannot deny that. I don't know if it's as bad as the media has made it go out, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we have enough data, because we don't know the Earth's natural cycles very well either,
Mm-hmm.
because we have been recording it that long.
Yeah.
So I don't know, quote unquote, where I stand with that. I know that for a fact we are affecting the environment. I have asthma, so if we want to get into like NOx and emissions that come from vehicles and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, I do know it does affect me. It really does. However, I don't know if it's as bad as everybody says it is, because maybe the Earth has a natural cycle. I don't know. I do
Mm-hmm.
believe that we have put a significant amount of CO2 into the atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know exactly where we make the effect and where Mother Nature is on its own cycle. If that makes sense, that's where like
Yeah.
I take it, some of it with a grain of salt, but I do believe most of it.
Yeah, man. Excuse me. I think like anything, the media hypes everything up in
Everything.
certain aspects. Um, but as far as like the climate is concerned, there probably are areas that humans have a negligible impact on the environment, and there's others that, like Beijing or Shanghai or something, where there's so many people in a small area that you're just polluting the crap out of that place. So I mean, I think there's a give and take in either one, but of course the Earth has a heating cooling cycle over how long the Earth's been here, and that's undeniable. We've heated, we've cooled, heated, cooled, back and forth. So I think it's kind of a mix. Earth is
Yeah,
doing its thing, but we're just not helping it.
helping
You
it,
know? Yeah.
not helping it. Rather, I mean, you
Yeah.
could be however you want to look at that one.
Yeah, I think we're just kind of that weird in between thing where we're either forcing it one direction, or because of what we're doing is just speeding up, some direction. I think we're kind of in that space right now.
Cool.
All right. Well, I figured we could kind of end with a final question here. We've kind of been alluding to this for most of this episode of the podcast here, but people like to believe one aspect of a company or another, or one aspect of something or another. So, do you believe in terms of space related things? Do you think people should be more bipartisan in who they support? Or do you think people are okay with only backing one player in the game?
Oh wow. Um, I will be honest. I am a SpaceX fanboy, an Elon Musk fanboy. I like the way that things run. However, I haven't ignored other players
Mm-hmm.
very much because I think competition is always good. Um, Growing up on like sports teams, I mean, playing things like that, like there wasn't a competition, there wasn't a reason to want to. I mean, like I had a goal to be better at this, but I could take my time.
Mm-hmm.
um like in track, like I wanted to run a sub 50-second 400 meter. That
Mm-hmm.
was my goal. I knew I was going to get there eventually, but I had this one kid who ended up being my rival my entire 4 years of high school track, that pushed me and made me achieve that goal my freshman year, versus I was thinking probably like my junior year is when I finally have the strength enough to do that. But I had to push that in my freshman year because I didn't want to get beat by this kid. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that applies in the space thing where, you know, I'm not necessarily saying everybody's this guy's good and this guy's bad. I think competition altogether is good because we all have the overall same goal of progressing human and mankind and wanting to get the answers. So I think competition and being a little bit more supportive to both companies would be, or more than both companies. The Blue
Mm-hmm.
Origin and SpaceX are the ones that come to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think we should be a little bit more supportive in different ways. Just because like you might have your favorite, but you can't ignore the competition.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's definitely like, I follow SpaceX very closely. If anybody who's ever like looked at my stuff can probably tell, but I also follow all the other ones at the same time. While I might not like post about them as much or, think about them as much, I definitely follow them. So I'm under that same, opinion as though I have my preferred, but then I completely give it up to everybody else who's trying. But I also feel that it's kind of like the EV game. As long as it's compelling product and it's actually
Yep.
brought to market, then I give it up to them. You're doing good. But if it's just like a yap, we're going to talk about it for the sake of talking about it, but never do it, then okay, you're going to get all the heat that you deserve on that.
And if we want to go into that EV game just a little bit, so my school is partnered with GM.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned a little bit more about the GM side of things. And you're talking about like a compelling product. So I'm just like, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but okay. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I guess I'm technically a General Motors employee at the same time from my college side of things. So
mm-hmm.
it's interesting because we'll start to learn some of those things as they make it known within their company, and it'll be interesting to see how they actually want to approach it if they're actually truly are serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even in that game, I'm very much of, while I have my preferred again because I own one currently, but do I crap all over every single other person who tries to make one? Well, I try not to, but there are certain aspects that they deserve some criticism, one way or another in
Criticism,
different companies, not
yeah.
necessarily just like one in particular, but
I mean, if you make something ugly, I mean, you make something ugly, it's a turnoff. But if you
yeah.
want to, yeah, exactly. Criticism can either help or destroy, depending on how it's given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think especially in space market, there's a lot of criticism for anything who isn't SpaceX, because I mean, let's be real. Right now, they're like the one it's always in the news. It's always making, these big, awesome videos, all the cinematography and stuff they're putting into it. So it's capturing a lot of people's attention. But does that mean like Rocket Lab out of New Zealand, who's launching all these like awesome small sats to low Earth orbit, are they not doing just as good? Like, I think they are, just in a different market aspect. So there's tons of things to consider with that.
Yeah.
Well, my man, I appreciate you being on this episode of the podcast with me. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your evening to sit here and yabber about my favorite subject.
Thank you for having me. When you're like, hey, you want to be on podcast? It's like, me. I didn't think you're actually going to pick me. So this was actually kind of an honor for me too, because I've never actually done anything like this. So I was pretty excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
Oh, the honor is mine because I love sharing the topic of space with anybody I can. Do we have anything we can look forward to from you? Do you have anything kind of upcoming you'd like to talk about?
Well, I was in the process of making my next YouTube video. I just kind of started doing that, kind of filming while I'm at school to take part in kind of what I'm doing. But I completely messed up the door I was painting, so I was like, I don't really want to put that garbage out. But I'm working on filming another video, so I should have some stuff coming out on YouTube sooner or later. So I guess that's what's coming for me is I'm working on that while I'm trying to go to school and make a difference in the world.
Can you kind of give people like a quick synopsis as to what they can expect from your channel? That way they can go find you
My
in there.
channel is going to be kind of focused on vehicles and DIY, like do-it-yourself fixing things. Vehicles mainly because that's what my major is. But I've built computers. I like computer. I used to be a programmer before I switched to automotive. So like, it might be varied. So I might have a video you might like. It might be about constructing a video game DIY or building shells with wood because that's fun too, or how to change your oil. Like, there's going to be a lot of different little random things.
Mm-hmm.
Even I think CF Tesla, one of my he just started doing a rate my drive kind of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
or like a rate this drive kind of thing. Like, you might just get me doing a voiceover as I drive to school and work, and you just watch the time lapses how long my drive is every day.
Hey,
I don't know. It'll be a variety of things, and I'll just kind of see what people want to see from me. But it's going to be a lot of DIY and of kind of like a vlog in some ways. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is how you fix this. This is kind of what I'm learning today, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there's as evident, there's a market for everything on YouTube. So,
Yeah. But we'll see what happens. I don't know. I just kind of started it, so I don't really know quite where I'm going to push everything yet. So,
well, again, I appreciate you taking the time, and maybe sometime here in the future we could film another episode. It'd be a pleasure to have you on again.
sounds good. You let me know, and we'll do it.
All right.
All right. Take care, my friend.
You have a good night, man.
Bye.